Hello and welcome, hopefully welcome back, to Life's a Bitch and So's Your Mom. I'm your mom. Now last time we were talking, well actually last time I was talking and hopefully you were listening, I was telling you that you really should stop going out to those little expensive hamburger shops around the corner and spending your money there when you could be cooking at home. And the problem was, as was pointed out to me later, not everybody knows how to cook. So, being your mom, I thought I'd take care of that for you. Yeah, we're doing a cooking lesson today. When I was growing up, my parents actually taught me how to cook. Both my mom and my dad were really good at cooking, some fancy stuff, some plain stuff, but it was something that we all learned as we were growing up. But these days aren't those days, and it's entirely possible that you just really haven't had the chance to learn how to cook. So today, we're going to do some cooking. Now we're going to do something basic. We're going to do hamburgers. Why hamburgers? Well, hamburgers kind of teach you all the fundamentals of putting some food together. And the good thing with a burger, if you mess it up, you can still eat it. First and foremost, let's talk about the equipment that you need to cook a burger. The first thing you're going to need is a pan. This is a cast iron pan. It probably weighs about 20 pounds. You buy one of these and it's going to last you for life. And the cool thing is, you can pick these up at discount stores. This one was about $30. It'll probably last me as long as I'm alive. But if you're really short on funds, don't hesitate to go to Goodwill, St. Finney's, eBay, any place, garage sales. A good pan is going to weigh a lot, cast iron, copper if you can find it, even a good heavy aluminum pan. If you buy a pan for $2.50 at the grocery store, it's going to burn everything you've got. Don't waste your money. Second item is our spatula. The spatula is the handy dandy item you use for flipping your burgers. Okay, yeah, that was self-explanatory. You probably have one of these. Next item we're going to talk about is the knife. Why do we need a knife? Well, we're going to cut the buns in half. We'll get to that in a few minutes. This is a serrated bread knife. The first one I bought cost me $2.50 at Crate & Barrel way back in the day. And actually it lasted me about 25 years. So obviously you don't need to spend a fortune on it. I bought a new one recently. It'll outlast me just like this pan will. Last, and definitely not least, is the stove. Here at Mom Central, we've got an electric stove. Now, electric stoves don't heat the same way that gas stoves do. Electric stoves heat on a more consistent, steady basis, but it takes longer to heat up and longer to cool down. So in order to regulate the temperature on an electric stove, you need to physically move your pan on and off the heat to get a quick change in temperature. With a gas stove, you just turn the heat up and down. So we're going to do a little bit more work to cook on an electric one. If you've got gas at home, good. Now we've talked about the equipment that we need to cook the burgers. Let's talk about the ingredients themselves. First, and not foremost, the buns. I prefer bakery buns. You can buy just what you need, get them freshly made that day, and you tend to waste less money because you get exactly what you want and it's fresh. The differences between bakery buns and the pre-made buns is you don't know when the pre-made buns were actually made and how much preservative is in them. And honestly, they just don't taste as good. We're going to get back to these in just a minute. The real important thing for your hamburger is, dun, 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 your hamburger. So I've got two different things here. I've got ground beef and ground chuck. Ground beef is ground up cow. It doesn't have to be a particular part of the cow. What it does have to have is meat from a cow and fat, and usually in the proportions of 75% meat to 25% fat. Now a lot of you are going, ew, that's a lot of fat. And yeah, it kind of is, but fat is important. Fat is flavor. Fat is juicy. Fat is tender and yummy. So 75-25% mix is really going to give you a delicious burger. You do have the option, however, of getting ground chuck. Ground chuck is from the front of the cow. It runs about 80% lean to 20% fat. It's a little bit leaner, so it's going to run a little bit tougher, but the chuck itself actually has delicious flavor. Some places you can find ground round as well at about 80-20%, and that can be really delicious because round is a heck of a good tasting piece of meat. Now, some of you are going to insist on using the 95% lean, 5% fat meat to make a hamburger. It's going to taste like shoe leather, and it's going to feel like shoe leather in your mouth. It's nasty. it doesn't have enough fat to give you that really good juicy burger. So if you decide to do that and waste $6+ a pound on it, let me tell you what Julia Child suggests. For every pound of meat, pound in or grate in or mash in a half a stick of butter. Oh yeah, it's good. Now I shouldn't really have to tell you this, except I actually know that I do have to tell you this. The first thing you want to do before you ever start cooking is wash your hands. If you don't wash your hands before you cook, please. So, those of you who don't know how to wash your hands, get your hands wet, soap, and sing happy birthday twice. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to, and for your sensible hearing, I'm going to do it silently. But you want to give a good 30-second scrub to make sure any dirt, loose debris, bacteria that's on your skin gets washed off. And then rinse your hands thoroughly, because you do not want to put soap into your burgers. And burgers are kind of interesting. It's ground beef. It's got a ton of surface area. That means there's a lot of places for it to be exposed to bacteria. So the cleaner you are, the less chance you're going to get that stuff in your burgers. I'd say dry your hands thoroughly, but you know what? You don't have to. We're going to be playing with meat, and because of the fat in there, having slightly damp hands actually makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to start by shaping our burgers. I've got here about 1 pound of meat. This happens to be the ground chuck. And all I'm going to do is divvy it up into 4 pieces. Yeah, it kind of falls apart. And no, you don't have to be exact. After all, this is all for you. Anything that you're not going to cook immediately, you should put into the fridge and keep it covered, wrapped up with a little plastic or saran wrap. One of the tricks to making a good burger is to make sure that you don't mash the daylights out of it. Yes, I'm making a mess. And you do want to make it thin. We're going to make thin, crispy burgers as opposed to thick, juicy burgers. We will get to thick, juicy burgers in a minute. I'm not usually real anal retentive about being perfect round shapes because generally my buns are rectangular. If you want to consider them as sliders, go ahead. They're not. So as I said, be gentle, don't mash the daylights out of it. You've got warm hands, it's going to help to melt the fat, and you don't want that. You want that fat nice and cold and delicious. Make our nice burger here. And there you have our 4 burgers. Impressive? No, doesn't matter. They're going to taste good. Now, before you cook the burgers, you do want to salt and pepper them in advance. Yeah, I know, you're always told don't salt meat in advance, it draws the moisture to the surface. Well, that's not entirely true. Salt does draw some moisture to the surface, but it also draws proteins to the surface. And having those proteins on the surface when they hit the pan means that the meat's going to set a good crust in advance. You're going to have better texture and better flavor. Now, how geeky am I? Well, I'm using regular old table salt at the moment. If I was at home, I'd be using pink Himalayan salt. Seriously, it's delicious. Is salt different from one kind to the other? Probably not. It's probably all salt. But pink Himalayan just seems to taste good on beef to me. And yeah, I even put it on my salads. And yes, I salt my salads. So one thing that's nice about using a cast iron pan versus an aluminum pan or a copper pan is the fact that a cast iron pan can become seasoned. Now, not seasoning like we use with our meat, but seasoned. It's a process of putting oil into the pan, heating up the pan, and letting the oil basically soak into the fibers, as it were, of the cast iron. Do this repeatedly, especially with a brand new pan, and you will have what is, in essence, a nonstick surface. Is it as nonstick as the official nonstick? No, but it's really quite good. And in a pinch, you can cook without adding oil. That said, we're going to add oil to our pan today because, well, as I said, fat's delicious. So, we need to get our pan hot before we put the meat in. If you just put meat into a cold pan and bring it to temperature, well, what's going to basically happen is you're going to turn your hamburger into soup. It's going to steam rather than fry. It's going to be gray. It'll still taste okay, but it's going to lack that certain hamburgerness. So once your pan feels like it's getting hot, you want to take a couple of drops of water, splash them in the pan, and if they start to dance about, your pan is getting hot. If you put it in and it turns to vapor instantly, that's a little too hot. And if you pour the water in and it doesn't do anything, you've got a little bit more way to go. Now hamburgers don't really need any fat in the pan. Whether that's a pre-seasoned pan like this or non-stick, there's enough fat in the meat that it's going to cook up and separate from the pan after a while. To play it safe, however, you've got a couple of options. You can use a spray non-stick. If you do this, take the pan off the heat and spray it and put it back. This is an aerosol. If it hits heat, it will go boom. It happened to me this morning. However, non-sticks, in my opinion, have a tendency to burn, so I prefer to use a little oil in the bottom of the pan. This is peanut oil. You can use canola, anything except of olive oil or something that has a low burning point. As soon as you see it shimmer, the oil has come to heat. All right, once you've got your pan up to temperature, you put a little oil in it, go ahead and put your meat in. You should hear that lovely sizzle. Don't overcrowd the pan. If you're just cooking for yourself, cook 2 burgers, maybe 3. Put extras after they're done in the fridge, and you've got lunch for tomorrow. Now to make sure we've got lots of room, we're just going to cook 3 of the burgers right now. Now, put meat in the pan and don't touch it. We're going to let it go for 2 minutes. And by the way, I just misspoke. We want to let it sit on this one side for 3 minutes. And what's going to happen during those 3 minutes is that the hamburger is going to make good contact with the surface of the pan, going to set the crust, and it's going to begin to separate from the pan. If you go in there and you start fiddling with it, all that's going to happen is the burger's going to fall apart. It's not going to be a nice, cohesive burger. So leave it alone. All right, it's been 3 minutes and we want to flip our burgers. If they set up nicely, they should not stick to the bottom of the pan. Hey, it didn't stick. You know we're doing well. It should be fairly cohesive. And you should have that beautiful crusty side. Now you're probably asking, why did I lift up the pan just now? Well, it's flattering me in the face with a little grease, so I turned it away from me. Yeah, they're good burgers, but you don't have to get burned to do them. We want this to go for 2 minutes. Now, here is where we're going to talk about food safety. The FDA wants you to cook this burger to 160 degrees. You can, absolutely, that's safe. And hamburger, which is ground chuck, ground round, whatever, is exposed to a lot of bacteria and contaminants in the process of being ground. So it's probably very safe to cook it to 160 degrees. You're an adult and you get to decide for yourself. If you have a food thermometer, know that around 120 is rare, 140 is medium, and 160 is shoe leather. If you don't have a food thermometer, take your hand and shake it up. Let your hand relax. You poke right here and it's nice and squishy. This is incredibly rare. All of you want to be French. Take a bit of a fist. This is rare. Tighten your fist. This is medium. Tighten your fist. This is thoroughly cooked and therefore inedible. What I mean by that is when you take your spatula and you touch in on the burger, the way it feels will correspond to how your hand felt. I'm pressing on that burger. It felt like this. That means my burger is now a medium rare to medium burger. That's about as done as I like my burgers. But I want to flip it over. Make sure both sides are nice and crisp. Now, not everyone likes skinny, crispy burgers. The reason I like to make them is they cook fast, and honestly, I don't want to waste my time in the kitchen some days. So we do have a thicker burger as well. You'll notice it's a little bit deeper. But what we've done that's really different is we've made an indentation in the center. The point of making the indentation is that in the cooking process with the thick burger, you'll find that the proteins coagulate. They tighten up and they squeeze out the fluids. And what happens is this turns not into a hockey puck by swelling up in the middle. So by making the indentation, those coagulating proteins, as they tighten up, will basically fill out the center of your burger. Same rule of thumb, we're going to put it in, we're not going to touch it, but we're going to let it go for 5 minutes. gonna let. All right, we flipped our burgers over, and at this point, we've got one side with a beautiful crust on it, the other side is raw. So at this point, you're gonna need to start guessing about time. In 2 minutes, I want you to walk over to the pan, I want you to press on the center of that burger, and see how done it is. We will stop the cooking on these burger burgers about 1 minute before they come to the level where we want them done. So if you want a rare burger, you want to make sure that at this point, it's where you want it, nice and soft, 1 stage earlier. We're going to take it off the pan, we're going to put it onto a plate, cover it, and we're going to let it sit for 1 minute. The heat will continue to cook the burger inside, but we have something else we need to do. This is also the point where you could add cheese if you wanted to your burger, if you like cheeseburgers. Put the piece of cheese on, don't cover the pan, and end up cleaning your burgers. When I was growing up, I used to spend a lot of time with my Aunt Ingrid. And my Aunt Ingrid made the best hamburgers. And it wasn't until I was older that I found out why hers were so much better than anyone else's. She would take the buns, take them in half, rub them through the nice fat that was left over in the pan, let them soak up some of that wonderful beef fat, and toast the hamburger buns in the beef fat. So to Aunt Ingrid, I miss you very much, ma'am. And to Cousin Bill, hi Bill! Because if it hadn't been for Bill, I wouldn't have known that she does this. And there you have it. A quick, fun, easy, and cheap hamburger. Didn't even cost you any replicator rations. Bon appetit!